meeting you right where you are on your foster care journey. This is the Forgotten Podcast.
Welcome to the Forgotten Podcast, where we are sharing the stories of the foster care community and bringing hope and practical help to the foster parenting journey. Dr. Stephanie Shackelford is here today with me. I'm so excited to talk with you, Stephanie. I'm going to let our listeners hear a little bit about you before, though. Stephanie is a senior fellow at Barna Group, where she has researched and written for a variety of nationwide research studies on Gen Z, mental health, purpose, calling, and discipleship. She and her husband live on the campus of Eagle Ranch, a ministry for families in crisis, where her husband is the director. And today, Stephanie is here to offer us some practical help for really improving kids' mental health through relationships, purposes, and tech-free spaces. So, Stephanie, welcome and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. It's so great to be here with you.
I know that one of our podcasts, our gal who finds our guests for us and connects with our guests, I believe she heard you talking at CAFO.
Yes.
Is that right? Were you at CAFO?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I just heard such rave reviews on what you were talking about there. So excited to dive in to this subject. Yeah. So we're going to go right to your recent Barna report, which is called Gen Z Mental Health and Wellbeing. So in there, you offer 6 practical ideas for parents to implement with their kids. And before we get into those, let's just make sure we're all speaking the same language. What defines Gen Z?
Sure. Yes. So Gen Z, there's a little slight variety in definition, but the way we define it is kids born between 1999 and 2015. So they currently would be about ages 9, 10 through ages 26, 27.
Okay. So 7 of my children are Gen Z.
Okay.
So this is going to be very good. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about those 6 practical ideas. What are those?
Yes. So for this study, what I did is I spoke to over a dozen experts in various fields of psychology, education, child development, research, really across the spectrum. And consistently, these experts were saying these 6 themes, and then also went to the literature and peer-reviewed journal articles and all the latest research being done. And those were all confirmed in that as well. And the 6 themes that were really seen is a need for Gen Z to have places to have tech that are tech-free. So just these boundaries around technology for their mental health, as well as a need to support parents, guardians, and caregivers. They're feeling very overwhelmed in this Gen Z mental health crisis, so they need a lot of support. That there's a lot of lack of connection. So just this need for Gen Z to connect in person. The 4th theme was really needing to broaden Gen Z's story around just who they are, especially when you look at things like trauma and just hardship and resilience, and having that rooted in the gospel that offers both lament and hope. And then 5th theme was just going back to our faith roots and using that as a big foundation. And then finally, drawing Gen Z back into a sense of purpose.
We'll probably get into those a little bit more as we go, but your report says that mental illness seems to be more prevalent in Gen Z than in previous generations. So why do you think that's the case? And what does this actually look like? Help us understand that a little more.
The CDC recently put out a report that said for high school students, nearly all indicators of poor mental health and suicidal thoughts and behaviors have worsened in the last decade. So this is a very real thing that's going on. And you can really track these, especially anxiety and depression that has just skyrocketed among Gen Z. And you can really track that with just how smartphones have taken over. So researchers like Jonathan Haidt and others have really shown us that there's really a tipping point in between 2010 and 2015 when smartphones really became just readily available. Over 50% of Americans had a smartphone, I think, in 2012. And that is the exact time that's correlated of when youth's anxiety and depression began to just dramatically increase. And so that is definitely a huge factor that technology has just come to play in our mental well-being for our kids and for ourselves as parents and caregivers, and then just all that comes with that in terms of the lack of meaningful connection and relationships and sense of purpose that we feel as well.
Mm, wow. It is, it's, there's, okay, so there's such a, it's a correlation. And, but how do we, I know it's easy to look at smartphones as the enemy,
Yes.
right? Um, how do we, kind of have that clear awareness and understanding without maybe villainizing the different, or like, like there's
Mhm.
personal responsibility in all of this.
Yes. Yeah, yes, I tell parents all the time, "I'm not asking you to go throw your phone in the lake." That's not I wouldn't be able to, get home from where I am if I didn't have my Google Maps, so but there is just a deep awareness that we need of how these technologies are affecting us, and especially with kids developing brains and minds, they are not meant to handle just the onslaught of information and connections that are being thrown at them. The amount of bad news that they're consuming just constantly. We're really not designed as humans to take that all in, but especially kids developing brains. And so it's really a matter of looking at how can we intentionally use technology where it's beneficial and put up appropriate limits and boundaries for our own well-being.
Do you think that this youth mental health crisis is more prevalent in kids who've experienced trauma?
So my study didn't specifically look at this, but I know from other research that yes, that is what is being indicated, that especially kids that have had childhood trauma, that they are suffering from worse mental health. A lot of what we'll talk about today is just this focus on consistent, healthy boundaries around technology, rhythms for connection, a sense of purpose. And I think those things can be hard when you've had a childhood that's been disrupted by a lot of
Mm.
adverse events or trauma, certainly. So that would make sense.
Well, it's easy to get overwhelmed
Yes.
by this kind of thing, right?
It is.
Um, but here at TFI and on this podcast, we really want to offer practical help and we want to offer hope. And the first practical theme in your report centers around technology, which is what we've been talking about. But how can creating tech-free spaces help our kids' mental health? What is the vision of what it could look like?
Yes. So I'll just paint a picture a little more of what it is so we can just contrast that of what we need. We all know this, that technology is such a pervasive presence, and it really is designed to foster an obsession. That's a quote I had from one of the people I interviewed for the report. I mean, if you think of
Mm,
apps and social media algorithms, video games, those things are meant to draw you in more and more, and they are inherently addictive. And so we
mhm,
see teens and youth just really getting sucked into this. Of with over a third are on social media almost constantly. Over half are using their phones overnight, so they're checking social media and updates and messages between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. So it's disrupting sleep
mm,
and development. And so, what is needed really is just appropriate guardrails and limits to be put in place. So,
mhm,
having very specific areas in your home where phones or screens are not allowed. So, research shows over and over that two huge things you could do is just having no phones in bedrooms and then no phones at the dinner table. And so, using the dinner table for relational connection, kids are really missing that, which we'll talk about, I think, a little later with connection, but just modeling what does in-person healthy connection and conversation look like at the dinner table, and then no phones in bedrooms, because what technology is really doing is making us look so inward and isolate and be alone. And that is doing nothing to help anyone's mental well being. And so, having a place where you put your phones in the overnight hours. My husband and I, we and all our kids have, well, not the 3-year-old, but the rest of the kids have, old school alarm clocks we actually set since we
mm.
don't have our phones in the room. So that's
Yeah.
one practical thing that we have done. But I will say this really is only effective if parents are modeling this as well. And
Mhm.
so it's not just that you're putting boundaries for your kids in place, but it's really this family culture around what are we prioritizing in the home? Why do these things matter?
I totally agree, and that's something our family has started doing as well. Is, for years it was, yeah, kids put them away, put them here, do that. But me and Clint would just do whatever
Mhm.
we wanted with our phones. And I felt that same conviction of, if I'm not living it, and quite honestly, I've just recognized how much I need it. Like, I actually make it a goal every day that I write down, and then check in if I did it or not, is no phone in my bedroom when I sleep. Because I recognize in me, I recognize the level of sleep being better. I recognize that when in the middle of the night or before bed, if I'm having trouble sleeping, when it's there, it's just too easy to reach for and listen to something to distract. And
Mhm.
the phone is just taking place of relationships, right? Relationships with God, relationships with family. So yeah, I feel it. I feel the difference when I
Mhm.
sleep with my phone in the room and versus when I don't.
I do too. I notice mine not waking up with my phone as the alarm because then I turn that off, and the first thing I'm seeing to start my day is all
Oh,
the
yeah.
notifications and emails and whatnot, or it's just too
Yes.
tempting to want to click on those things. And so
Yeah.
not having that in the room, I intentionally want to start my day with prayer, but even if you just start your day with silence, whatever it is, instead of being bombarded from the get go. So I noticed a big difference there, definitely. And the other thing I would say also for parents is that we do talk a lot about screen time, but I think what's not quite talked about as much is screen type. And so the type of screen time really matters. And the more we can make screen time communal, the better. So again, phones are making us isolated, turn inward, focus on ourself. They're designed to be addictive, even secretive. Same with video games, can be just very immersive by yourself in this alter reality world. And so the more that you can say play video games in an open space on multiplayer mode. And then the more that you can engage with screens communally, looking at things together is just very different than just being sucked into it by yourself. So that would be another thing I talk to parents about as well.
Yeah, that's so true and good. We've experienced that too because it's too easy for everyone to be on their own screen watching their own show in the same room, but it's
Right.
not connecting.
Yeah.
So that's very good. So when we live that way, when we kind of remove some of um, those tech, like when you make some of those changes, what might that look like for a child? For like, can you even see differences in their brain and development, like as far as the study of the brain, like how does that benefit?
Yes. So there is a lot of studies just about kids connected to creativity. So when we start to have some boundaries and limits around screens, it frees up our brain to actually be bored. So we've just really grown accustomed
Mm,
as a society to numbing, and we can never be bored. And kids don't know how to be alone anymore without being entertained. And so, and this starts very young. I know we're talking a lot about like preteen, teen, adolescent, but just even talking about tablets with young children. What are we training them toward? And how do they learn to entertain themselves, to be creative? And then there's a big connection with nature as well. So it's not that we're just taking things away, but we're inviting them to
yeah.
experience more community or get outside in nature more. And there is a lot of studies about the connection between being in nature and our mental well-being, especially with
Mm,
anxiety and depression. And so the more that we can even invite kids into spaces just in the natural world around us, the better, and
mm.
free up time to do that. And so I think those are a lot of the positives that we're seeing when we do have some of those limits in place with the technology.
Yeah, that's so good. When you're considering, so maybe someone's listening and they're like, okay, we got to cut, because you're like, I'm doing it wrong or this is not right. What are some recommendations of how to get buy-in from your kids? Just like do this in a way that doesn't feel like you're just stripping them of everything that they know.
Yes, no, I'm glad you asked 'cause I do get pushback from parents of, well, we're already so far down this road. Like, I can't go back. That's great that now we know we should delay when you first get a smartphone. We should delay when you're first on social media, but we're already down that path. So what are we supposed to
Yeah.
do? And so I've had some very good conversations with parents just about whatever it is that you've decided that you want to implement, I first always say, start extremely small. So we're going to be talking about a lot of ideas. And I know my personality is these are all good. I want to do all of them. And then it's
Yeah.
too overwhelming to do them all. So then you just do none of them. And
Yes,
so I
right.
do want to also say the research is very encouraging about just starting small. Having 1
Mm,
hour off of social media a day translates to immense benefits even 6 months later. So just don't underestimate the power of small steps. And once those become more normal, more natural, more part of the rhythm, you can add more gradually. But that'd be the first thing I tell parents. And then secondly, I do have conversations with parents about just humbly approaching your children of, hey, I didn't know all of this when we first did this, and now I do. And it's my responsibility as a parent, as a caregiver, to do what's in your best interest for your flourishing and your well-being. And I desire these things for you. And so that is going to require us to make some changes, which I know are hard. But here are the things that, you know, I believe would be best for our family. And you're not going to only, it's not just you. Our whole family is going to do these. So
yeah.
if there's a teen that's really struggling with social media and the effects that that's having on their depression or anxiety, I mean, I really do challenge parents. The whole family can limit social media or have different parameters.
Mhm.
Like, it's just make this again a communal thing, that we're all in this together, and that makes it so much easier. In addition to finding what just at least one other family that is kind of on the same page with this as well. You don't have to have the exact same parameters, but have the same
Mhm.
just desire to have some boundaries around technology, to have kids experience relationship and time in nature and those things we talked about. And having even
Mhm.
just one other family you can do that alongside is really powerful too.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. Because I think it's easy to come at it in fear.
Mhm.
And then often that fear, at least in my life, when I parent out of fear, it comes out quite controlling. And so that, and nobody likes crazy mom. Nobody likes controlling mom. And I don't even like controlling mom. It doesn't feel good. But I think just taking it slow and knowing that small steps really can make a key difference over time is really helpful.
Hey friends, it's Jami, just popping in here for a minute to say we love to hear from you. And it's really important to us that what we're bringing to you is actually helping you, is meeting felt needs. Would you give us a rating and review or contact us directly and just let us know how we are being helpful, but also are there ways we can be more helpful to you? We want to hear from you. We're encouraged by you and we're here for you. So thank you for taking a few moments to do that for us. And now let's head back to the episode.
Okay, you've also talked about in your report teenagers benefiting from, you quote, thick community and embodied experiences. What do you mean by those terms?
Yes, I know they're kind of funny terms. Um, yes, they are a little bit researchy terms, but I do find them helpful. So because we contrast what we have with what we want, kind of like we did with technology. So what we see, the Surgeon General has declared that we're in this epidemic of loneliness. And so what we're seeing is that we have these very thin relationships. So we might have a lot of acquaintances, but very little meaningful friendships. Gen Z is the most connected generation ever, and yet they're extremely lonely and isolated. And so that's what we mean about the thin connections is that there's not this depth, there's not this thickness to the community that is marked by regular, consistent, and deep connection. And then
Hmm,
simultaneously, a lot of this connection is happening virtually. And so it's disembodied, meaning we're not actually experiencing it. It's virtual. And so
mhm,
we're not really getting experiences. We're just living vicariously almost. So Gen Z is a very curious and open generation. And yet, again, they're very isolated and anxious. And so they have access to all this information, but they're not actually experiencing that themselves. And so that's what we mean by giving teens embodied experiences. So actually experiencing
mhm.
things in the real world in their actual bodies, which kind of sounds funny. We have to
Yeah.
explain what that is, but that's really the world that we live in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. Hopefully this will connect, but I'm just thinking, and I'm not like a downer on Chat GPT. I think there's benefits of it. But I found even in my own work, let, if I put in some prompts and then let Chat GPT kind of give me the end result, if I haven't, like, that can be helpful if I'm using it to it helps me think. But if I take that final and just run with it, it's like when I try to like translate that final into like make more sense to me, it's like I can't because I haven't actually done the work to like get to the final. Right. And it's the
Yeah,
same sort of thing.
there's research studies that back up what you just said. Yes,
Huh.
exactly. We're not actually doing the hard work, which is what produces the connections and the meaning for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's quick, it's
Yeah,
efficient, but
yeah.
it's not human.
And more
It's not
teens are
relational.
turning, the first when they have a mental health challenge, the first places they're turning is TikTok or Reddit for advice, as well as ChatGPT or AI, instead of actual real relationships that really know them, that have a depth of understanding of who they are. And so this is something we're definitely seeing.
We also know that Gen Z often lacks a sense of purpose. There's a loneliness epidemic, but also, I'm sure, lots of research around this sense of purpose. Most Christian parents want to help teens cultivate the sense of purpose, really, for the kingdom, but many of us don't really know how to do this.
Mhm.
And you say teens need an invitation into a larger, more compelling narrative that propels them outward, beyond themselves, and toward a sense of meaning, not just happiness. So, what are some thoughts around how we can invite our kids into God's larger story of redemption?
I just love this. I think it's very hopeful that kids are just the unhopeful and the not hopeful part is that they're really being fed this narrative that life is all about happiness, which is really nothing new for this generation. I've a previous study I've done on purpose, 80% of people say their primary goal in life is happiness. And that actually practicing Christians believe this even more strongly, which was very surprising to me. And so there's just this narrative that we are meant to be happy all the time, which of course no one wants their kid to be miserable or any of those things. But when you replace that word instead with purpose, that just
Mm,
adds so much depth because a key part of purpose is how do you use who God made you to be to serve and benefit others. And so it draws you out of yourself, where happiness is so internally focused, which is just driving further anxiety and depression, and it's not realistic to be happy all the time, nor a natural, healthy response to the ups and downs of life.
right.
But you can be purposeful even in pain, even in suffering.
Mm,
You can be drawn into the story of the gospel, which includes all of those various hardship and pain and suffering, and yet a deep sense of who God is and being rooted in that.
mm,
And we see Gen Z really being drawn to this. So half of Gen Z Christians say that seeing that Christianity promotes good in the world around them is actually more important to them than knowing that Christianity is true or trustworthy. For them, it's more important that they see that the gospel is being lived out and how we love others than it is that they're really concerned about if it's true or not, which I mean, I would argue you need to know both, but just saying that Gen Z are really wired to want to see that and be a part of the mission of the church. So I think that's just very hopeful that there's a natural receptiveness there that they can be invited into. And then another really encouraging piece, which kind of connects to the previous theme we talked about of connection, as we see that a lot of research shows that church attendance in person, so not virtually, but in person church attendance, and not just what you believe, is actually a huge buffer against suicide and a lot of other mental health challenges. And so, a large research study, the Global Flourishing Study, looked at a lot of different types of social connections that we have, and they found that religious service attendance, so going to church, is a stronger
mhm.
predictor of reduced risk of mortality, suicide, and depression than any other type of social connection. So there's just this immense power of going in person with a body of believers to church and worshiping that is just huge for all of us, but especially for our teens to be a part of, because it really connects everything we've talked about. Of It's a sense of, that thick community that's embodied, you're actually
Mhm.
experiencing it. And it's just a sense of purpose where you're doing something meaningful together in community, that is just immensely beneficial, as a family. So I also encourage families, like if they're not yet plugged into a church, just really prioritize that. And I know there can be a lot of challenges of getting a lot of kids out the door, especially if there's specific needs that you feel like maybe
Mhm.
aren't easily met at church. But it's also been my experience that if we can humbly communicate what those needs are for our children, I think most healthy churches would be more than willing to work with us to help lower barriers or whatever it may be that's preventing us from engaging in church. So I do just really encourage parents that that's just a huge rhythm for a family to do together.
As a team here at TFI, we're reading Every Good Endeavor by Tim Keller. And it's we just got started, but it's just talking about how work was not actually a result of the fall. It
Mhm.
was created, we are created to have purposeful, meaningful work that contributes to the lives of others. And so that's, I mean, just that's what I was thinking of when you were talking about that. It's like we're wired to, although we think we want just happiness, but what we really want is purpose.
Yes. Yeah.
So when you think about parents and helping their kids, really walking with their children or the children they're caring for, um, to develop a sense of calling and culture of service, like how might they do that? Where it's like we want to help you find purpose um, and to serve, to know how to serve. What would be some encouragement you'd give them?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I just mentioned the study about going to church and how powerful that is. Another recent Barna study called The State of the Family studied different families on a spectrum from resilient families to fragile families with stable and struggling
Mm,
families in between. And I thought it was really interesting when they look at resilient families. Really, one thing that makes them stand apart is that they don't just attend church, but they're actually contributors at church. And so they
mm,
really prioritize serving together as a family in their church community, or in their neighborhood or around them, needs that are around them. And I just think this is just a really key piece, even to go back to what you're saying before with every good endeavor of this is just part of who we're meant to be to live out the kingdom of God. And so the more that families can do this together, and again, letting the parents just lead and model this of going to church and serving would be one example. It really shows kids that they have meaning and purpose in this world that can feel. I think what a lot of Gen Z is feeling right now is a sense of meaninglessness when there's so much pain and suffering that they're aware of, not only in their own story, but all over the world. And it can feel just
mhm.
leads to a lot of fatigue and
Yeah.
like meaning hopelessness. What can I even do about this? And so,
Right.
but when they start to see, oh, me showing up every week in church nursery or whatever it is, and
Mhm,
those
mhm,
kids actually now I get to know them. Now they rely on me to be
mhm,
there and I'm actually needed. Obviously they're serving, but it's also doing something for them to show them, oh, I have a purpose, I have a meaning in this life. And so that's a big thing. And then as well as just cultivating a sense of service in the home. And so really starting at home to cultivate what does it look like to serve one another. Obviously, chores, are a easy example to think
mhm,
of for this. But even how can you just cultivate this sense of serving and loving one another and seeking that out as part of
mhm,
just who we are as a family? And so if it looks like everyone after dinner is just in the kitchen cleaning up together and that's just what you do every night, it's not a discussion, not a debate, not it's just like this is what
mhm,
we do. We're serving one another by cleaning up together, whatever it can look like.
mhm,
And I think especially with teens, we can actually expect too little of them is what we're seeing in this day and age.
mhm,
They're capable of a lot more than we maybe think they are. And
mhm.
so inviting them into things that maybe you feel like are a stretch, but that give them a real sense of purpose and accomplishment when they're able to rise to that expectation with your coaching and guidance, of course. You're not just
Yeah,
leaving
yeah.
flounder. But that also just gives them so much meaning and purpose as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it teaches them such good life skills. Like our family, we have 8 children, and out of necessity, I started like delegating things more to my kids, more than even out of a sense of I'm going to teach them good lessons here. But when they were 8 or 9, I was like, everybody knows how to do their laundry at 9. So by 9 years old in my house, every kid was responsible for their own. And one of my most cool memories of this was when my son, who was maybe 10 or 11 at the time, came home and he said, "I have a baseball game tomorrow. I need to wash my jersey." And it was just like this. I was like, "Whoa." Like, he
You
is
can have-
owning, like, he needs to wash his jersey. And I just thought that was super cool, because not that I would never help them if they needed it, but it was just like, this is his. He knows he's got the responsibility and he'll do it. And I just think I've told my kids, like, I need your help for this house to function. Like,
Yeah.
it can't all be on me or on dad. Like, we need to work together. And I do think there is just a sense of, okay, we just need each other. I think that does put something in them that is
Mhm.
healthy.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it can feel overwhelming because it's like, "Oh, it's gonna take me so much longer to teach you how to make this meal for dinner than if I were just to make it."
Mhm.
But just having a
Right.
little bit of perspective to think ahead, "Okay, well, me teaching this several times means that in however many months, then that child can do
Yeah.
that on their own." And so that's been
Right.
helpful for our family as well, and we've had seasons where it's just been a necessity. I've been injured, and I could not do
Mm.
things around the house, and we've had to rely on our children to do things that I wasn't sure they'd be able to do, but I couldn't do it, and I found out, "Oh, you were able to do that."
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think we have to let go of perfectionist
Oh, yeah.
expectations. Like, my kid never had any of my boys never had the fresh white baseball pants anymore. I mean, they did their own laundry and they were, and I'm okay with that. So I think there is that balance too of, like, if we need to also release control. If we're gonna and delegate in a way that it teaches them, and it's probably teaching us as well some important things. Well, Stephanie, it's been such a great joy to hear some of these thoughts and your wisdom and perspective and learning. And your report really does offer good news and hope for parents of Gen Z kids. So we're thankful for that. Uh, as we leave today, I just want to, like, what would maybe you say, what's one thing parents can start doing, or maybe what's the most important thing parents can start doing with their kids to improve their sense of well-being and mental health?
Just having a vision for what you desire for your family and then backtracking from there, starting very small. So to just reiterate what we said earlier of I love having a vision of where we want to go with our family, but then not letting that overwhelm you because you're maybe feel far behind. So having that vision and then backing it up to the very smallest thing you can do even today, to start making changes. And I just, God is so faithful to take our little baby steps and really just multiply them and allow them to add to our family's just sense of wholeness and well-being. And so that would be my encouragement.
I love that. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's wonderful to speak with you.
Thank you again for listening today. I hope this episode resonated with you. Let us know your thoughts. We really love hearing from you. And as always, if you want to learn more about TFI, catch up on past episodes, read engaging articles, or partner with us on mission with a gift of any amount, head over to theforgotteninitiative.org. And until next time, remember, if you're feeling overwhelmed, misunderstood, or questioning, why am I doing what I'm doing? Remember, you have a whole community here who cares for you. And even more, Jesus is fully able to meet your every need. Lean on Him and find rest in Him today. I look so forward to being together again very soon.
resonate.